later. Access to that. Awesome. And in the chat, I'm going to drop the link to this file. So you should be able to jump in there and actually duplicate it to your own drafts. So if you don't know how to do that, if you click this arrow here, you can actually duplicate to your own drafts, which looks like this. So I'll give folks maybe a minute here to do that, and then go from there. For people just joining, I just dropped the link in the chat for the Figma file we're going to use for this workshop. So feel free to go into it and duplicate it to your drafts, and then we'll get started. And then also, like, one heads up, I'll take Q&A at the end of this. So I'll go through my thing, I'll do the designs, and then if you have any questions about anything at the end, we can definitely have a discussion. So feel free to hold any questions until there. And then if you missed a step, again, this is being recorded, so you'll see it later on YouTube. You can definitely follow along. Awesome. So little intro on this project. I know there's not much you can see here. I just made it a template format, but it's actually a design that I put together in the latest course I put together for an app that essentially lets you rent luxury items for different occasions. So say you're going to a nice event and you want to wear a nice watch. This app essentially allows you to rent out this, let's say, nice Rolex for $100 for the day. And there's product cards involved in it. And so today we're going to learn how to design nice product cards for it with the combination of variables as well. And so we have this sort of empty frame that I placed here. We can design our product cards in there and go from there. So the very first thing I'm going to do is read the instructions. So we want to create two sets of product cards with the following information in there. We want an image for it. So the image of the item. And actually on the side here, I have some sample images we can use. There's one that doesn't have a background. So we can create one version without the background or a clear background here. And then we can pick one of these to do one that, is more of a sort of a stock image. Then we want to include the name of the product in there. So that's the item's name. So we can put Rolex Submariner, for example, for this one here. Then the price per day. So this is how much the user will be paying per day to rent that item. We want a favorites button in here. So this button allows you to essentially save that item to your favorites if you want to, keep it for later. You don't want to book the item right now, but you want to save it somewhere to view later. And then we want a book button. So you can click on book and presumably it takes you to a page where you can complete, renting that item out. And then also a popular pick tag. So this is like, you've seen this probably on a lot of product cards where it's like this item's popular, this item's hot. So something like that to signify that this item's popular. So it could be a tag, and we could apply different things to it. For here, I just came up with this popular tag, but it could be anything else, like maybe it's on sale, or maybe a lot of people are looking at this item and you want to tell your users, like, there's 12 people looking at this item. You see that a lot on like hotel websites. And then while we're doing that, we're going to use variables to set up some spacing that we're going to use. So instead of setting up or typing in each spacing between like different elements manually, we're going to just set up a system and use variables and tokens to do that. And I think that might be a good first step to do. So what I'll do is go ahead and open up my local variables here. And before I do that, I'm also going to duplicate this file myself. So I'm not editing the template. And so I'll go to local variables here. And right away in variables, if you haven't opened it, essentially you can create different variables in here. This is the very first page if you haven't created any variables in a file. So you can either rename your collection. So by default, variables are held in collections, which essentially could be used for, like, let's say colors or spacing. Those are typically collections that you might have in your file. So for this one, I'll just rename my collection one to be spacing. And if I wanted to have a color one, I can always create a new collection. But since we already have a collection, we can just rename it and use this one here. And what I want to do is set up, using the 8-point system, a few spacing that we can use for our designs. Maybe we'll do 8, 16, 24, and 32. And I think that should be good enough to cover most of the use cases here. So we'll create variable here and do number. Now for the naming convention, essentially you can name it however makes sense to you. Of course, if there's other people working in your project, you want to make sure that it's something that everyone can make sense of. So it could be something as simple as spacing and dash, and then you can use some sort of metric, like it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it could be small, medium, large. So I like that concept of you using, like, extra small, small, medium, like that. So we can do this one as extra small. So I just named my first variable here. Right now it's set to 0, but instead I want to set it, click here and set it to 4. So just type 4 in there, and we'll create another one. And we'll do this one as spacing small. And this one, we'll just multiply that by 2 and do 8. I'm going to do one more, spacing medium, or dash M. And we'll do 16 here. And then we're going to do one more, spacing large. And we'll do 24 for this one. And just lastly, spacing extra large, and do 32 for this one. So we have 5 spacing variables here now we can use in our project. And this is a more organized way. Also, if you're sharing the file with developers, they'll probably take advantage of it a lot because things are more structured now. And when it comes to development work, it's easier for them to take a look at this to get a guide of, what's the spacing system being used here. And everything's just nice and consistent, as opposed to having, let's say, something that's 15 pixels from the right and another one that's 14. So for that one, things could get missed, but using a system like this, we're reducing any sort of misunderstanding, or just the developer missing that step of checking all the spacing. So I'll close this one here and then get started with our product card itself. So you can really start with any of those elements and create your auto layout for that product card. And so I'm gonna just take the image here that we have. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come on this item listings page, and actually I'll draw a square like so, maybe 236 by 236. And what I'll do is that I'll copy the style of this image here and paste it in there. So I'm going to use the shortcut Option Command C to copy the style, and then hit my square here, and then hit Option Command V to paste it in there. Now, right now the image is cropped. So if you do click on the image here, you can change the fill mode. So instead of fill here, which takes advantage of all the sort of as much spacing or size as you have here, we want to do fit, so that none of the image is essentially cropped out. So now we have this image here that's square. And now what we're going to do is hit Shift A to make this an auto layout. And so that's also a really useful shortcut to turn things into auto layout so you don't have to every time use the properties panel. So now we have an auto layout frame, and inside of it, we have this rectangle with the image. And this auto layout frame doesn't have a fill, so let's give it a fill of white. And now we can see that it has a fill of white. It's quite different from the background here. And by default, it has the spacing of 10 pixels all around. So the vertical or the horizontal padding is 10 pixels. So that's the spacing from the left side here and the right side. So all the content that's inside of the auto layout has that spacing or maintains that spacing from the right and left. And then same thing for the vertical spacing here or the vertical padding. Now you could separate it out. So you could do individual padding. So you have a separate one from the top, separate one from the bottom. So there are cases where you might want to take advantage of that. For now, what we'll do is we'll keep it like this. And instead of the 10 pixel, now we can apply a variable and let's do the 24 pixels. So the spacing large, that is. And so automatically that variable applies. And now we have this 24 pixel spacing from the left and right. And then if you want to do that for the vertical padding, same thing. I'm going to choose spacing large. And now we have that applied all around. That's awesome. So we have the image in here. Maybe we'll give it a nice rounded corner. So we could also apply this to, or apply variables to the corner radius. Now, for the naming convention, maybe you want to go back in there and also have one for your radius. For now, I'll just use the spacing one and maybe do the 16 pixel or the spacing medium. And there's not much of contrast with the background here. So maybe what I'll do is also add a stroke. And you can either pick a gray color or this background has a slight bluish tint. So I'm gonna use a color picker to select the background color and maybe just make it a little bit darker. So it's sort of that blue-gray color. Then it gives it a nice effect. So now we have sort of the base of our card here. Then if I want to add something else, so I want to add the name, I can just hit T on my keyboard to add a text layer and click in here and write Rolex Mariner. Now right now, automatically my auto layout's filling out of the frame here. So that's not what I want. And the reason for that is that by default, it's having a horizontal layout. So everything that I place inside of the auto layout is essentially placed horizontally as opposed to vertically. So for this product card, generally for the product card itself, we want a vertical layout, especially on the mobile. There we go. So now by changing to vertical, we have the text down here, which is what we want. And for the font, feel free to pick any font you like. I'll just leave it as is. For the font size, you could do something like 16 pixels. I think would look nice. So you don't want to go too small and don't want to go too big. We're working with a mobile device, so I think that sort of 16 pixels is a sweet spot for a lot of the text here. Then we also want the price per day. So perhaps we could put that on the right side of this, sort of the same line. And to do that, I can duplicate my text layer that we have for the name. So I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate that. And then I'm going to select both of them. So both of these text layers and hit Shift A to also make this an auto layout frame. And so now there's an auto layout frame inside of a bigger auto layout frame. And so what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to choose the horizontal layout. Now, the width of this auto layout is changing because the setting here for the horizontal resizing is essentially set to hug, which means take up as much space as the contents inside of the item. If we were to set a custom width by just moving this frame, things wouldn't spill out from the auto layout anymore. I'm gonna undo that. That's not what I want. I just wanted to show you sort of, why that's happening. So what we want to do is just change this to a price, let's say $99 per day. Maybe for the per day part, I'm gonna knock it down to 12 pixels here. So this is great, but I want that $99 a day to be on the right side of my auto layout frame. So to do that, first of all, again, because that auto layout frame that we created for the text layers is choosing hug, what it's doing is looking at how much text each text layer is taking and using that as the width. But what we want to do with this one is to do fill container instead. So by doing fill container, it will take up as much space as it can, you know, as well as in combination with the padding that it has all around. So that's as much space as this text layer can take when you do fill container. And now, what if you want to space these out? What we could do is instead of having a horizontal padding of 10 here or horizontal gap between the items, you can adjust this, but if the product card changes, then, or even if the text layer size changes, then it's no good. So what you want to do is instead go to where it says horizontal gap and choose auto in terms of your spacing. And once you do auto, then essentially the text layer expands to take up, or the horizontal space in between them takes up as much space as it can as well. So that's why it's pushing both items to the far left and the far right here. And now if you want to also add a button in here, we want a book button. So we can go over here, add a text layer and write book now. And I'm going to hit Shift A on just this text layer. I'm going to do fill container, and I'm going to use the middle align center for the auto layout so that that text is in the center of this auto layout frame. And for the fill, I'm going to just select nice color here and do the blue, maybe a really dark blue, and change the text to white. And for the spacing here, maybe we can do extra small, or let's try small. I think that's better. And also apply a small radius, corner radius to it. Now, if you want your sort of buttons for an app like this, where it's sort of more luxury items, you could also go into the text layer and type settings and change it to all caps. If you want to do that, and then maybe we'll make it slightly smaller and maybe add a little bit more letter space, the spacing between the letters. Maybe 10% is enough. And you could even give it a medium or bold look. I think medium probably looks good for this one. So it looks a little bit more premium. Now, one thing we want to do is that we want to design this auto layout in respect to sort of the frame that it's going to go into. So I have this frame here, and it's using a 24 pixel sort of gap from the left and the right. So we want to definitely keep that gap. So one thing we could do, we could use grids to help us here. And we can actually just place our card and give it a fixed width so that it's taking up, that much space where it still has 24 pixels from the left and right. And then we'll turn off the grid here. And then for the entire auto layout, I want to do a line top center like this so that the image is brought to the center. And right now it looks a little bit off because the height and width don't match. So you could give this a fixed height, or you can also set the minimum height of this card to be the same as the width, which is 382. And now I don't like how my book now button is sort of near the top. It should be closer to the bottom. So one thing you could do in a case like this is to wrap your content. So that's the image and this text layers that you have, or this auto layout for the text layers in another auto layout. And so now for this one, what we could do is auto as well. So it sort of shifts everything down, um, between, or adds enough spacing, so that the button is all the way closer to the bottom. And now we want a few more things in here. We want the favorites button. So we already had added the book button, and then a popular tag. So for the favorites button, I actually copied the favorites button that we use in the course that I'm teaching right now. So we can copy it from there and place it inside the card. And if you paste it, it will right now go all the way to the bottom. Probably we want it somewhere closer to the top, or um, somewhere maybe near the image. Now this doesn't look so good. It's pushing the image down. So what if we want to just place this button, and it doesn't interfere with the image? Something you could do is go into this. So I just hit Command X to cut it. Go into this layer here for the rectangle or where you have your essentially image, and paste it and maybe group these together using Command G. And so now you can move this around and it won't interfere with this here. Another alternative, which I like better in an auto layout frame, is to use what's called an absolute position. So as soon as you click that, what will happen is that it will ignore the rules of the auto layout, so you can just freely place this wherever you like in your design. You can manually place it and space it out 24 pixels from the top and the right. Now, with that, maybe I'll take a minute pause here for people to catch up. And if you do have an urgent question or you're stuck somewhere, maybe you can drop it in the chat and I'll try to help out. Does the variables come into play later? Yeah, so we use the variables for the spacing, and then for the product card, we could actually apply it later as well. So we can actually take all this information, put it into the variables panel so that it syncs from there. Great question though. Take another 30 seconds here. All right. So we want to come back and add a popular tag as well. So for that one, we could place it in a few different places. It could be on the left side of the image. It could be at the bottom here. So maybe for this one, the sort of the top left would look good, especially with the visual sort of hierarchy that we have, or the way we have it set up where we have the text down here on the left, on the right. So we could place a tag up here. And for that one, I do have I believe I had icons somewhere in here. I may have gotten lost in here. Okay, maybe it's not in here anymore. So what I'll do is I'll just create a tag. So we'll zoom in here, and to create the tag, we can hit R on the keyboard. Actually, we can just do text and type in popular pick here, and then we can wrap that in an auto layout frame. I know it's a lot of auto layout frames inside of each other, but it is the way to go when it comes to quickly making changes or having a dynamic sort of frame. And maybe for the spacing, we'll do small and then extra small from the top. So that's small horizontally, extra small vertically. And I want to give it a fill that has maybe, orange pick. Originally, I had the intention of having a fire icon in here, so it'll look cool with the orange. And I'll do maybe even a gradient, something like this. Feel free to play around with it. You don't have to exactly follow the same gradient or color, in fact. Then I'll give it a fully round corners. For the text, I might do slightly smaller and do maybe medium. Second thought, I think maybe it's a bit more horizontal spacing could look better. Now we place this inside of our auto layout. So similar to what we've done with the favorites button, we could do an absolute position and then place it where we like. Oops. Like so. And so we have the popular pick tag as well. And make it actually the original size. I think that looks better. It's a little bit too small. So there we have it. An alternative look to this could be you can move your popular pick and this favorites button right below. So that's another way to do it. And for this button here, I might add a little bit more vertical spacing as well. I think that looks a little bit better. So it's easier to click. Again, we want to keep in mind the user experience side of things. On mobile screens, it's hard to click things. So we don't want to give the user little space to press with their thumb. And maybe a nice shadow would be cool as well. I like to use this beautiful shadow plugin that I just came across not long ago. So it's just called Beautiful Shadows. So in your resources under plugins, if you do search Beautiful Shadows, it's essentially a more playful way to add your shadow instead of hitting a bunch of numbers. It actually lets you simulate what that looks like if you move the sort of the source of the light here or the elevation of things, and then you can move around your color picker. So I do the same thing with the color picker and do a bit of a darker bluish gray look to it. And we're using this shadow to kind of bring the the card that we created here sort of off the page, so it's standing out more visually. It looks better, catching the user's eyes, and then we can just apply when we're happy with it. And so that's pretty much it for this first version. Now, if you have multiple ones of these cards, we can move it up here, 24 pixels from the top too. If you have multiple cards, we can just hit Command D, move this one down here. And then I can select these two using Shift and then hit Shift A to make that an auto layout as well. So now we can really add as many cards in here as I like. So that's the first product card. Now what we can do is, before moving to the second one, is we can quickly add some data in our variables to actually have the product take those, or the product card take the data from the variables itself. To do that, I'm going to go to local variables again. And this time I'm going to create a new collection by going to create collection. And I'll type in products for the name. I will do create variable. We can do string for the name of the item. So we'll just do name. And we'll create another one for the number to represent the price per day. I'll type in price per day like this. I'll just leave it to default values for now. Now for images, we don't have variables for images, at least yet. So one thing you could do is you could create your images inside of a component and then have multiple variants, with the variants sort of having a matching name. So perhaps I could do that on the second product card that we designed. That makes more sense since we have two different images here. So we have the price per day. Now, if we want to sync this with the data from here, all we need to do is select the name of the item here, go to apply variable in the text panel, and do name. Now for the price per day, I like this trick of using Command D to duplicate this text. And we'll do it 3 times. And I'll select these ones, hit Shift A to auto layout them with 0 spacing horizontally. And here, for the last one, I'm going to do just per day like this. For this one, I'm going to leave just the 99 number. And for the first one, I'm going to do just a $sign. And we're going to do centered for a line here to the right. And this way, you can actually apply your variable to just this 99 number without the other parts interfering. So you can apply variable, price per day. Of course, it's 0 because that's what we have in our variable table. If we now change this to what we had, the title or the name of the product applies. And if we change this 0 to, let's say now we want to do 150 a day, that applies to the product here as well. Now, if you want multiple products, it does require multiple modes. And right now on the professional plan, Figma gives you access to 4 modes. So technically you could have 4 products, all using different modes to represent the data. And you can create modes by clicking plus. I won't do that in this workshop, but I do have another workshop on YouTube that you can watch where I covered that. So yeah, with that, we'll jump to designing our second product card, and then we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So for the second one, what I want to do is use one of these images instead. So the ones where it's not a product shot like this one here, and create a similar look, but just a different image in there. And we'll do that on this page here. So for this one, I'll just drag or copy this second photo here into here, resize it a little bit, and maybe take 24 pixel spacing from the right and left. There we go. Can create the vertical to be a little bit smaller, this, and then hit Shift A to turn that into an auto layout frame. And now we can also do the same thing. We can add a fill of white and stroke, or you could, as a shortcut, copy the style of your auto layout card here by hitting Alt Command C, and on this auto layout frame, hit Alt Command V, and you just copied and pasted the style from one auto layout frame to another. It's easier since we already set the stroke, the shadow. We don't want to do those again. And for the image here, I'm going to set an 8-pixel corner radius. And why don't we go ahead and copy the Rolex and the name of the product and the dollars per day in here. Now, this is getting pushed right now, and it's getting all messed up because here we have things set to fixed. It's fine for the horizontal resizing, but for the vertical, we want hot contents instead. And then we also have this top pixel of 24 for the margin. We want that to actually be 8. So let's do spacing small for both the spacing from the right and left and also the top. Now this text here is a little bit too close to the edges. So what we could do is for this text layer, or in fact any content inside, we can just set a custom spacing. So this one already has an 8-pixel spacing because it's inheriting that from the actual auto layout parent. But what you want to do is apply some additional spacing in here. So you could go in here and add a horizontal spacing of 16 pixels and maybe a vertical one of 16 pixels as well. So now you have this gap here. Although for the vertical, I think that's a little bit too much, so we can do small. You can copy over the button in here as well. Looking good. And the button as well, it could be in the content or have the same sort of idea. So we could nest this also in an auto layout frame. And this one has an absolute position right now, so we want to turn that off. Do fill container here, and this one we don't want 10 pixels. We want, or how many do we have for this one? It was 16. So this one we also want 16. Now this button here right now also has a fixed width, so that's why it's filling outside of the box. So you want to do fill container instead. There we go. Now for this version, I can copy the popular pick and the favorites. And instead of doing absolute, we'll actually include them in the auto layout frame. And we'll create an auto layout between them, do a horizontal one, do fill container, and do auto for the horizontal gap. And we just move that up. And same idea here, we want to do 24 or 16 for the horizontal spacing. And I want to do middle align. So right now it looks off because the popular pick has a different height than the favorites. So we could just do vertical like this. And so that's the second version of our product card. Now, with that said, it might be useful to quickly cover how to set up or use images and variables as well. So for these two images, let's say you want to actually allow use variables to set them. What you could do is you create a component, let's say out of one of them, create another variant, and you don't have to follow the steps. It's more for just knowing if you're applying variables to your products. Now let's say you want to apply or copy the style of this one. So Command Option C, Command Option V in here for the image, not for the, oops. Okay, I just accidentally rotated, so now I fixed it. So yeah, now we have this component. We'll just rename it images. And for the property one, we'll leave it as property one, and we'll just rename this one to Omega, and this property one variant to Rolex. And so now what we want to do is go to the local variables, and I'm going to set an image or a string variable to use for our image, and just type in image. And so whatever you type in here will be what's used as that variant. So we'll look at whichever variant is the Rolex in here and use that as the image. That's what we want. And actually, the casing matters too. So right now I have it in the lowercase, and here I have it in uppercase. So I want to fix that. And so now if I copy this variant in here to, let's just do a custom size here. And I'll really quickly set it to the same 8 pixels. Get rid of this one. This one, the height should be HUD contents. And I'll do clip content. So now what will happen is we can change between Rolex and Omega, or in our local variables, we have that one. So we can actually set the variable to image. And so now we have the Rolex one. If we change this one to Omega, boom, the Omega one shows up. So that's how you can use images in variables to apply it. So with that, I want to really quickly touch on the Product Design Masterclass that I have upcoming. The cohort actually starts next week on Monday. So this is going to be the first cohort. And right now I'm running a promotion for you guys for joining this workshop. So if you do want to join us on that course, we'll learn how to design product that we just covered in this workshop, but of course cover all the pages as well, all the interactions, create a really advanced prototype as well, using variables, using animations, and it has about 160 lessons. We have 6 weekly sessions that we'll run. And just to quickly run you through the type of prototype you can expect from the course. This is the prototype that we put together in that course. So of course you can go to the different product description pages, and they're all in sync with whichever one you click. So that's using variables as well. And actually book the item, and the price here, the total, will also adjust based on your selection. So everything's very dynamic. And confirm booking. We use a lot of GIFs and videos. So if you want to learn how to create prototypes like this and designs, essentially design a complete mobile and web product, do feel free to check out my upcoming masterclass. And if you have any questions about it, more than happy to answer. And with that, I'll open it up to, we have about maybe 7 minutes for Q&A. And yeah, we'll go from there.